Hello dear people, I'm Infernity Nerd. In this video I will be ranking all of the Infernity cards. Let's start with 100 Eyes Dragon. He's going to category A. He's a really strong card with 3000 attack, but most importantly, it can copy the effect of Infernity monsters in the graveyard. Conjurer also goes to category A. Conjurer is such a good card. It can revive itself every single turn and it's a free link material. And while it's on the field, all opponents' monsters lose 800 attack, which is a big difference. Avenger is going to category B. It's a good monster. It's a level 1 tuner monster that can be summoned from deck with Needle Fiber. But with Sage, why would you ever summon Avenger anymore? And it can also be a brick if it's in your hand. Knight goes to D category. It's such a slow card and it only gets its effect when it is destroyed. There are better cards who can discard cards from your hand like Dangers, Dark World Dealings and many more. Fiend definitely goes to S tier. He is the heart and soul of the Infernity strategy. Also it feels so good when you top deck him because you can reveal to special summon it. And when it's special summoned, it can add any Infernity card. This effect is not once per turn. Fiend starts your combo, continues your combo and ends your combo while multiple barriers and breaks. Guardian goes to category D. It's not a bad card, but it's too slow and it does nothing except being a brick when you draw it. It has a good protection, but what is the point when you can protect your with multiple barriers? Beast also goes to category D. It has a good effect, but for 2011 standards. This card is not good anymore. Archer goes to F category. What is the point of this card? Attacking directly for 2000 damage when you have no cards is useless. If you wanted to play a monster that can attack directly, just play High 8 from Sky Strikers. Launcher absolutely goes to S category. This card does everything for the deck. It gets monsters out of your hand, it sets up your graveyard and it summons 2 Infernity monsters from your graveyard to continue the combos. Launcher got hit to 1 in 2010 and it's still at 1 to this day. If it was at more than 1, it would cause chaos. Mirage also goes to category S. Mirage is Launcher, but it's a monster and you can loop Mirage multiple times with 100 Eyes Dragon and Levier. With Return of the Reaper, Mirage is so much better because it can be summoned from Banished Zone or from hand. Necromancer also goes to S tier. Necromancer can revive any Infernity monster from the graveyard and thus effect is soft once per turn, meaning it's not once per turn basically. Necromancer is Fiend's best friend basically. Wherever you see Fiend, you will definitely see Necromancer too. He revives Fiend many times and this way Fiend gets more broken. It's also a level 3, so it can make rank 3 like Levier or link monsters like Cherubini. Paranoia goes to a tier. It's a really good card, but it sadly negates the effect of the monster it summoned. It also has such a strong graveyard effect where it allows Infernity to grind. It can banish itself to add an Infernity monster from the graveyard to your hand. Patriarch also goes to a tier. It's the bubbleman of the deck, and can be used for making rank 4 monsters, and that is very important especially because Fiend is still at 1 in TCG. And it gives protection to your Infernity monsters so your opponent cannot turn off your barrier. Pawn is a D tier card. It's too slow and you have to wait a whole turn to use its effect, definitely not worth it. Phantom Hand is an F tier. This card is absolutely horrible and useless. It's a trap, so it's a slow and it banishes your cards face down. It's such a bad card. Hell Fiend goes to a tier. It's a generic level 6 synchro monster which can negate a card and pop it if you have no cards in hand. It has more than the original Fiend, so it makes it harder for your opponent to turn off your barrier. And it also gives a synchro monster summoned with this card the ability to attack 2 times. Doom Dragon also to a tier. It's a strong witch, it's not being used in modern Infernity decks sadly. But this card can pop a monster and burn as well. And it has 3000 attack. It's like Dragoon but without a negate. Contracts with the Void goes to D category. It's not a bad card, but it requires you to discard a lot of cards from your hand where Infernity will never have except the starting hand. Break goes to S category. It's the best Infernity trap card after Barrier. It's more flexible than Barrier because it doesn't require an attack position Infernity monster. General goes to A tier. It's a good card, but before Sage, you couldn't send it to the grave consistently. But with Sage, it's really good now. It's like Launcher but from the graveyard. And the negated effects of the monster summoned is good because of Wildcat can still banish an Infernity monster for cost, and Levier can revive that banished monster later. Dwarf is F tier. It's such a bad card and useless. Barrier is S tier card. It's our negate card and it's not once per turn, and Infernity always ends on multiple barriers. It requires to have an attack position Infernity monster, but it's such a strong card. Destroyer goes to F tier. It's a level 6 monster, which means you have to tribute a monster to summon it, and its effect to burn for 1600 if it destroys a monster is not worth it. Inferno goes to C tier. It's a good card, but it's a trap card, so it's slow. But Infernity did play Inferno back in 2010 because it gets monsters out of your hand and sends Infernity monsters to the grave. Randomizer is going to C tier. It's a good card, but it was never meant to be played in Infernity because it draws cards. But Randomizer can be played as its own control deck, which I have shown on my channel. I should post an update on the deck very soon. Reflector goes to D tier. It's not a bad card, but it's slow because it's a battle trap. And it can also make Archfiend miss timing because it burns for 1000 after it summons Archfiend. Sage goes to S tier. It's a tuner worth a good effect, and this is what Infernity lacked for a long time. It being a tuner means it can be summoned from Needle Fiber. Its effect on field is that you can discard your entire hand, which is really useful if you drew too many monsters which you cannot send. And also when it's sent to the graveyard, it can send any Infernity monster to the grave. That effect is really good because now, Needle Fiber becomes another way to Archfiend. Force goes to C tier. It's a good card because it can revive an Infernity monster, but it's a battle trap, so it's kinda slow. Suppression goes to B category. It's a really good card. It can negate Nibiru, which is the most important thing about the card. It can be activated the turn it was set if you have no cards in your hand. But if you search something of Archfiend, suppression will be turned off because you have a card in hand and they can drop Nibiru then, so it's kinda bad in that regard. Ogre Dragon goes to category A. It's not an Infernity card, but it was used by Callan in the manga, so it's an honorary Infernity monster. It's a spell or trap negate while you have no cards in hand, and it has 3000 attack. Wave Motion Inferno is an F tier card. It's a useless card and it's not searchable of Archfiend. Giving 400 more attack is pointless. Its effect to send itself to discard your hand is not bad, but there are other cards that do the job way better. Wildcat goes to A tier. It's such a good card because it has many useful effects and interactions. First, it can summon itself by discarding an Infernity monster, which is really good for emptying your hand. It's a tuner which can make Needle Fiber and summon Sage or vice versa. Its effect to banish an Infernity monster from the grave as cost to increase or decrease its level is really strong. Beetle is also an A tier card. It's a level 2 tuner for Needle Fiber and it can tribute itself to summon 2 more beetles, which is really strong. Zero Max goes to B category. It's such a strong card, but it's not searchable by Archfiend. It can also make Archfiend miss timing, which is really bad, and Void Cauldron goes to F tier. It's a bad card and it's not useful at all. It does give protection, but that is all it does, sadly. And lastly, the Return of the Reaper would be S tier for sure. It's searchable by Archfiend and it can summon any Infernity monster from your hand, graveyard or banished zone. And its graveyard effect is insane because it allows Infernity to grind. Its graveyard effect is that it can set itself when an Infernity monster leaves the field. With the Return of the Reaper, you don't have to use Launcher except if it's absolutely needed in some situation. And that's it for the ranking of Infernity cards. This was really fun and I hope you had fun too. Have a good day and see you in the next video. Goodbye.